Welcome back to Turn Down for What Tech Charged, the live podcast episode as we come to you with episode 4. It's Thursday, February 6th. You are joined by me, Chris Bowe from BoweFamily EV, Martin Meek from Martin Rebuilds, and the legendary, world-famous Jcraft Miller with a fancy new background. I feel like I need to go get some neon now because I don't have any.
It's the thing, isn't it? Neon.
But we do have T-shirts. We have T-shirts.
Yes.
We have viewers. We have microphones. Look at us, man.
Doing things.
Almost official.
We are the definition of fake it till you make it. Thanks for joining us and helping us do it.
We are here.
Mr. Jace, we missed you last week.
Yeah.
Yes. I apologize. Life gets in the way.
Yeah,
it does. Well, how do we want to kick it off today, fellas? Who's going to launch this thing? What's our first topic?
See how things have been between you guys for the last 7 days since we've been here. Like, what's new? Anything exciting that you want to kick out of the way before we jump into this topic?
Man,
go ahead.
Yeah, Jace kick it. Well, you kick it. You were missing last week.
Sure. Yeah, no, everything's good. I don't think we got to talk about our West Virginia trip because I wasn't here last week. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit. But that was awesome. It's interesting. I learning a lot. Being able to kind of for the first time see that we still need more infrastructure. I've seen that before, but we have one charger that allows us to get to that ski resort in West Virginia, and if that charger wasn't there, we'd be relying on 110 hotel charging, which could work, but it didn't give we didn't get enough overnight, and we were at already 85%. We didn't even get up to 100. So that was for the first time where I was like, okay, we need more. We've got to have more, and where maybe an EREV concept would sort of make sense, right? We just need 100, generator bed of lightning, something, or a bigger battery in some cases too, right?
Battery.
I swear to God, Martin is obsessed with range extending generators, and Jesse is obsessed with hydrogen. There's always got to be one.
Everybody's got their thing, but no, it was a good trip, and it's a Ford dealer actually in Elkins, West Virginia, that has made the trip doable, so to speak, without sort of hardship, if you will. So, and there's charging up on the mountain. They've put in I think they've got like a total of about 12 level 2 J1772. So, they've kind of got, the range. There's no fast charging per se, no DCFC up on top of the mountain, but plenty to,
what kind of efficiency did you get, Jace?
You go up the mountain, then you come back down. So, and it was pretty cold. So I think we were at like 1.6 on the way there. This was the extended range area that we took. Yep. And then, coming back down the mountain at one point, we were at 6, 7. It was crazy, but we did pretty well. We were never nervous or anything like that. The Tesla Supercharger network was awesome for us for this trip. That really makes a difference here. But like I said, it's funny that Ford dealer actually in Elkins is what kind of makes it a not hard trip. Just an easy a trip, but they're only 120 kilowatt units, I think 300 and some amps or something, but they worked great. We just kind of sat and charged up, and
now, how'd you precondition for that? Because I know you weren't running an Android Auto.
Yeah, no, we didn't we really don't we've never preconditioned for a charge stop, which sounds crazy. No, even in the cold, we've been as cold as like 17, 15-ish degrees in northern Michigan, never preconditioned. And yes, ambient. And it will jump up to pretty much every time over 150. It's pretty crazy. Our Lightning
this time, or the standard range?
This time we did, which usually we take the standard range on most trips, but this time we weren't risking it in West Virginia. We were like, we're going to take the extended range to get the, the extra juice. So.
Yeah,
But good trip. It was very
thinking
fun.
about you guys last week because I knew you were, going without preconditioning. And I wasn't sure what that was going to do because it's all about battery temperature. It can be as cold as it wants outside, but
Right.
battery temperature, makes it. I ran 200 miles roughly today, and I didn't precondition before I left. Battery was 44 degrees, and I got 2.0 the whole way at 72 miles an hour. So.
Yep, we do precondition to for trips. We will we have a Grizzle E Smart or a Grizzle E Duo not Smart, so it can't precondition. So we unplug and put the Ford mobile charger in, and we use that to precondition, and it works. But yeah, we don't precondition as far as charging. I mean, I'd really like to see that. I know Ford and Apple, or I guess at least Ford has said that Apple is going to release that for CarPlay. So I do all the public betas for iOS. So I'm hoping in one of these maybe that we'll see some improvements. So I did notice now that if you do a preferred charge network, it actually listens sort of at least to what you put in there in Apple Maps on iOS, and that was something that before you would put in your preferred networks and it would just ignore you, but now it actually sort of listens. It says out of preferred network. So we're making progress.
Are you able to put Tesla into your preferred networks? Because I have not seen that in there.
Yes,
it
it doesn't work as far as it's I think it's just using just Tesla destination chargers. It says Tesla Supercharger, but it's not actually doing what we would want it to do. So I actually texted Martin. I was going to try to get our VP connected to ARVP Pro, but I couldn't get the VP to connect for some reason, but we were driving at the same time, so maybe that had something to do. We're trying to do it at the same time as we're driving in the mountains. So I'll try it again when I have more time, but I definitely want to get that hooked up because I think that'd be a nice game changer for us to be able to use in the meantime. I know it won't precondition, but at least it uses all of the networks available as opposed to just some of them with Apple Maps.
Yeah, I'd love to see Apple come up with an update soon. Of course, for those that don't know, I was on Android for like a decade, man.
That's right.
And just recently, because my daughter needed to get an iPhone, and my wife has an iPhone, and so I was going to be the odd person out. Just made it communicating easier. I finally switched to Apple, and of course, as soon as I switched to Apple, like a month after switching to Apple, Android suddenly gets the preconditioning and the route planning with Tesla charging. And I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? Like,
why do you think
timing.
I run Android?
Yeah. Well, and Apple was the first one to get integration with the BMS. And so I thought for sure Apple would be the first one to get that as well. And, Ford's got a relationship a little bit deeper with Android because Android Automotive is the base of, I think, all their future tech is going to be Android Automotive.
Yeah.
And it's currently... Yeah, like it's in my sister's Aviator. It's in the Nautilus. So, hopefully Apple doesn't take too much longer or give up entirely on it.
I don't think they will. I think they're going to keep working on it, but they're not. They're definitely. It's almost like being first hurt in a certain sense. They were pushing it through, but it's not a good sign that nobody really else has picked it up. I mean, you don't see Hyundai, Kia, or you don't see really anybody else joining on. So I think it's still Porsche, basically like the Taycan, and then the Mach E and Lightning, and I don't really know of any others that have added the capability. So,
Chris, what about you? What's new this week? What
Man, I have largely had an uneventful week, and it's weird because I pretty much since Thanksgiving have always had an EV event or a trip that I was on, or was had my drama with my truck for a while.
I keep waiting to hear okay, what's broke this week?
Yeah, no, I think
going strong.
It's going strong. I think it's been raining for the past week, solid. I mean, we have one of these.
It's amazing when you seal the fuse box up.
The fuse box, when no water gets in the fuse box, it turns out that helps. So I think that was the root of everything, was that water was getting into the fuse box. It was shorting out wire harnesses. It was shorting out headlights. It was causing all the other gremlins. I think all came from that water intrusion into the fuse box. It just happens to be the last thing that they checked, which
is funny because you were all frustrated with Ford and it had nothing to do with Ford.
Right. Yep, absolutely. So,
I mean, I think there was your battery module deal probably did, and those are going to happen. You're going to get a % of those. It's like engines and trucks. It's going to happen on all manufacturers, but all in all.
Yep. So that's been great. That's been reassuring for sure. because we do have a trip coming up here in the spring to Arizona and the Grand Canyon. And I don't think we were starting to have a little bit of a lack of faith and confidence in being able to pull that off. But yeah, it's weathered this past week of heavy rain and storms, no problem. And so that's been great. And then other than that, I've just been slowly putting together. I added a second screen so I can see our podcast better on that. And my personal channel got over 6,000 subscribers, which YouTube sent me YouTube candy. So
okay.
Yeah. So
Man.
no, for I think, what is it, for 100,000 you get a plaque. Before you get a plaque, you apparently get candy.
Nice.
So that's the they
I'm
sent
still
me
just struggling along. I get 1 or 2 subscribers a day.
Yeah. I it's been funny. I'm gonna do a video. I've just hit my 6 months of being monetized, so I'm gonna do a video talking about how much I've made. Here's being transparent about that, being transparent with the sponsorship, where I've made as much money, probably more, from my sponsor than I have from the YouTube channel. And then the new thing that I did discover, I guess, this week was which I guess I knew, but it's just when it hits you, you get taxed on all this stuff, man. They send you 1099s. So
it's more of a pain than it's worth at this level.
Yeah, because you're not, look, I'm making under $100. I'll talk about all this when I do the video, but I make under $100 a month from the YouTube channel. I get paid basically every 2 months because they don't pay out if it's under 100. And so every 2 months I get a check, and they don't take out any taxes, so I've got to claim that and pay that on taxes. And then Kim Power was really great and sponsored me and sent me out, but I get taxed on that. All of that trip gets taxed, and the Work Sport tonneau cover, I get sponsored for that, and get, I've made quite a bit of money on people that have watched the videos and bought the product. And so that again gets taxed, and then YouTube gets taxed. And then even Amazon, a whopping like $41 of Amazon referral links, also gets taxed. So it's funny how much hand the government has in something they had no part of. I guess that's not true. They gave me an incentive, and so I guess that's how they get their money back on the 7,500 that I got. So all that stuff got to get funded somewhere. So
I'll be excited to watch that. I want to hear the guts of your monetization, how that happens. Just being somebody who's not a YouTuber, but I'm contributing to videos. How's that?
Yeah. I'm going to be really transparent about it. I'm going to show some of the data behind it. I have one weird video. Speaking of Chem Power, when I went out to Chem Power, I was my rental was a Volvo C40, and it was one of the videos I did that was probably early on, with the only one of the ones that got over 1,000. It got up to like 3,000 or 4,000 views. And then when you look in the data, almost all of it is from the Philippines. So
wow.
Weirdly, it got picked up in the Philippines as a way to learn English. And so it was circulating. I got a message that it was circulating around the Philippines as a video people were watching to learn English off of. So the views have nothing to do with the C40 itself. Of course, the Tesla Cybertruck one was super funny. The Tesla Cybertruck one was a really big one. That pretty much got me monetized and got me the views. Didn't make any money off of it because I wasn't monetized at that point. And then the other big one, big-ish, was VinFast. So VinFast, kind of like the C40, most of the views are from Vietnam. So suddenly it gets circulated around Vietnam, and then that gets a bunch of views. And then I think the other big one was my 2-year review of the Lightning. That one and a couple others continue to give me almost like residuals. Like, how like when a TV show gets in reruns, every month I get views on my 2-year review for the Lightning, on the Flash. I was one of the first people to put a Flash video out.
Yeah, that's right. You were. I forgot about that.
That Flash video was so early that I hadn't yet learned that I had to shoot horizontally. It was vertically shot like a short.
You were like one of the first people that you showed the charge speed in the display. Like you were, I think you were like the first person that showed what it would look like, because I think we maybe knew it was coming, but I don't think we had seen it yet.
Right.
I lost it when I saw that. I was like, what? We need this now. And it's a year later, and here we are.
So I still make money off that video. Then my tonneau cover videos get views, a couple others, but a bunch of other videos are like, a few hundred views. And that's just, and then there was, so I'll talk about all that. I'll be transparent. I'll show it. I think it's good stuff to just see. So that's on my agenda of things to do. And then, Yeah, that's pretty much been it. I've hadn't had any other driving or any other trips or anything new, and so yeah, it's been kind of an uneventful. I do have one step closer to owning a Cybertruck. I guess I should say one seat closer to owning a Cybertruck. This is a Cybertruck seat that has been turned into an office chair. So shout out Tim. Yeah, Tim Hoyer actually made this for me, and he does some with Model 3 seats and those kind of things. So yeah, I have. You can't really see it because of the background, but that is a Cybertruck.
I guess
seat.
I'm gonna have to make one of my Lightnings into a seat, so I have a Lightning seat then to compete with you.
There you go.
That would be an epic seat, because the Lightning seat, in fairness, like one of the things when I've talked about the trucks and why the Lightning is better for me is because I am such a fluffy guy. This seat does not particularly fit me. It hugs.
Bolstered.
It's bolstered, yes. And so the bolster is kind of hit, whereas the Lightning seat is a wider seat for me for sure. Like, I think the Lightning seat would be a little bit more comfortable, but it's just more.
Has ventilated seats, right?
It does. In fact, the fan is still under this seat, and if I wired it up, it would blow
it in.
all the electronics. I would have to wire it to a 12-volt battery and figure out the pinouts and make little switches.
Just a Milwaukee battery, clicked on the side, hook it up.
Yeah. No, it could absolutely happen. All the equipment is still under it.
Seats, I'm saying too. Heat those things out.
if anybody's Cybertruck seat has the blower go out and you're out of warranty, you can come grab the blower.
You have an Ego set of mowers. Just do a step down transformer, plug that baby in, and we're going.
Yeah, I've got that big distribution thing where you can plug it into it, and there's no 12-volt out, but there's USB out. Martin, we'll figure that out when you come in with all the other stuff you're going to do. We're going to engineer the seat and see what we can make it do.
Yeah, we've had a pretty busy week at the shop, and in my life, lots of stuff happened in the last 7 days. So I think I talked about a little bit last week. We bid on a GMC Sierra EV, bid like 38,000 on that truck. It was a 5,000 mile 24. Didn't get it. It went for 47. And when you start running numbers, it puts you in at about 65 to sell, about 60 done. And I can make $5,000 on an F150 that cost me 10, not 60. So really it was going to be one of those things. Do I really want 60 grand in a new GMC with no warranty? And that's what, I had that in a Lightning and I trusted that. I don't trust GMC. There's so much negativity about it right now. I really want a warranty. So I'll get to that here in a minute too, but, had a big week with our 3 Teslas. So we've got, 2 of the 3 Teslas we're making out of the 3. Got one of them done. It's driving, ready to roll. I had finally committed to jumping into Tesla Toolbox because I'm a Ford guy, right? I know FDRS, I know Forescan. I had never run Tesla Toolbox. So we paid for the subscription for actually a month. It's just about as cheap to do that. It's like, I think 50 or 75 bucks for a day for Tesla Toolbox, and it's $150 for a month. So why not? Because I got 2 cars to do. Went in, reprogrammed some things. It takes a long time. Tesla makes things difficult on the software side as far as technicians. There's all kinds of security things you have to get through with Google Chrome that you have to turn off security on your laptop. And then to get it connected, it's not just a OBD2 port. There's a special adapter that you go in. Got all that done, and about an hour after I learned how to run it, I was able to update all the softwares and the modules. The biggest problem I had with the car that I'm currently built that's just finished was I had no regen because we had traction control and stability control lights. So we were able to get that fixed, and the car's finished. So I think my daughter's actually going to buy it. She's the one driving that Model 3, and now she's thinking she wants the Model S because of the free supercharging. So, yeah,
the Model S is a nice car. I mean, it
is. It's a 14, so it's a little long in the tooth, but and 190,000 miles. But there's just not a whole lot to go wrong with those cars, and the parts are cheap. And you can pick one up at auction for like $3 or $4 grand because nobody knows how to work on them. Which brings me to the second half of my trip today. We started on the other Model S last week. Got the battery swapped in it. I'll have those videos coming up for long. And the 12 volt was bad. Well, you don't just go to O'Reilly's and buy a 12 volt from a Tesla. It's not. I mean, there's a few on the internet. The car actually had an OMU, the $460 OMU in it, but it's dead. I can't get it to charge. So I've got the former owner talking to OMU about getting a warranty on it. So we'll see how that goes. But so I drove today, a couple hundred miles, went to Tulsa, went to Tesla, picked up a new 12-volt battery, $165. And I didn't know how that experience was going to go. I've been to Ford thousands of times. You roll in there, the guy's super nice back in the service center. You walk right up to an open desk. The whole service center's open. You're watching them work on Cybertrucks and Model 3s and everything else. He gave me a body shop discount because we have a business. So we got a little bit of a discount, like 15 off. It wasn't huge. And they were pretty forthcoming with information. I didn't know. I know Tesla, when you call, you like get nobody and you can't talk to anybody, but the service advisor there was pretty good. So got the battery on the way home. This is what I was talking about warranty a minute ago, coming by a GMC dealer. And I thought, I'm stopping. I'm going to at least look in person at the Sierra, because I've driven the RST. Like you guys, I know, Jesse and Josh did a whole thing on that truck, but I wanted to set in one, and man, the interior is quite a bit different. And the GMC is the way I would go if I was switching. But I tell you, $97,000, it's not worth the battery difference for me from what you can buy a new Lightning for. Still,
just for reference, Martin, if you were to buy a 1,200 square foot house in Kansas,
yeah,
what would that cost?
You can buy a house, in town for $100,000.
Yeah,
in small town Kansas. Just pick a town; it doesn't matter which.
Right.
I know that's not the way in LA or San Francisco or probably even Cleveland, but
it's close.
But for
$200,000 buys you a decent house in Tulsa. So yeah, it's like buying. You have to live in the thing, but you can buy a new Lightning for in the 50s now. Extended range Lightning, and I know the LT Chevy is like 79, but it's like anything else; it'll come down. But nice truck, but I wasn't going to pull any triggers on something like that yet, especially with the things that I've got working. I think the range extension. The
challenge for you is that what you're getting into with a Ford. You can look at it and you never really know until you get it apart, but you have a pretty good knowledge. And because the Lightning is so similar to the gas F-150 with so many of the parts and the methods of assembly and the bolts and there's so much that is shared, that I think when you're looking at it what you're getting yourself into. And with a Chevy, especially one that's kind of a bespoke design, I mean, I know it looks kind of like the GMC doesn't look like what was that old not
Avalanche.
Ridgeline.
No, it's not Avalanche. That's why I like it better.
Yeah, it's so you just don't know what you're getting yourself into, man. And you go in there and you think you're buying it at a certain price, and then you go down the rabbit hole, and there's not going to be a lot of parts for those.
They have, like, GM has Tech 2 and the newer series software that you can rent and go into, but I'm learning it all over again, just like I'm learning with this Tesla. It's learning a whole new curve. And I almost just dumped these Teslas on Marketplace for 10 grand for the 3 cars just to get out from underneath of them, because I didn't want to spend the time investment to learn it. But I met a couple of guys that have really been helpful. Paul up in Iowa has been awesome. He texts me way more than he should. And now we've really got a handle on it. So I feel like I can work on Teslas now.
Have you talked to Tesla Winston at all? You know, when we did that show together with you and, and him?
Messaged him. He's good with the newer Model 3 stuff. He's never rented Toolbox 3 and really got into it this far. I think I'm probably further into it than he is, because we talk quite a bit, and he's just not quite into this older Model S legacy stuff. It's a different animal when you're dealing with something that's dated and software's not available for, and you really have to know people. So
yeah, I just think there's so many parts available for Teslas, and there's so many people that know it. So it's a little bit less.
That's why I'm headed that route. I would love to build nothing but Lightnings, but to be transparent for the guys that are listening that watch my channel or watch the show, I get this appearance that I'm just the Lightning guru and that's all we deal with. But to be honest, we've built 3 and I know them inside and out after the 3 that we've built, but my bread and butter is F-150s. We build more gas F-150s than anything because everybody will buy those. And the proof's in the pudding. You post one on Marketplace, how many messages do you get on a 20 F-150 versus a 23 or 22 Lightning? It's night and day difference. Just like when you go to a Ford lot. I mean, their sales are reflecting the exact same thing that I see. So we still build a lot. In fact, we bought one today, an 18 F-150, 2.7 two-wheel drive.
Nice.
So anyway, that's been the big week for us. It's been eventful. the sense of accomplishment you get from working through a new software of any type and being able to actually fix something. That's why I do what I do, is that challenge and accomplishment after the challenge.
Love it.
So with that said, we have a couple of topics tonight. I guess we can jump right into, the one that I'm sure a lot of people are going to be frustrated with Ford over, but yet, they don't.
Frustrated with everybody. You could be
it's not
Rivian,
just
Tesla.
Ford.
Like, when it comes to OTAs, man, it gets people riled up. There is no doubt about it.
Yeah, that is
Maybe
it.
even
So
Apple.
here's the big one that everybody's wanting to talk about, and there are some things that are really ambiguous with BlueCruise. So yeah, it's BlueCruise. That's what we're going to talk about. BlueCruise software version. This is a Ford release talking about the different versions. And this is not necessarily Lightning specific. This goes across Lightning, Mach E, and I don't think you can get it in the van or in the Transit.
No, but yeah, F150.
Yeah, the
new
F150 line.
Explorer, 2025 Explorer.
Probably Expedition.
I believe Expedition as well. Yep. And then it's now officially called BlueCruise and Nautilus. It used to be, I think, Lincoln Glide or something like that, or Active Glide. Lincoln, Nautilus, and new Navigator, probably Aviator, as well. So it's across the platforms.
I passed the new Expedition on the way home, brand new on the highway, and it had the screen looked identical to my Lightning. So they've evidently integrated that big screen.
Yep. I believe it's the same 15.5 inch.
Yep. Look like it. But so for everybody that's wanting, and Jace, you can jump right in anytime and correct me. Most of us, when you buy a Lightning, you're all the way to that left-hand side, that BlueCruise 1.0, where you just have hands-free driving, and it works okay.
Unless it's a 24, but yep.
Yeah, unless it's a 24. And when I say everybody that's got it, you typically start with the 22s and 23s.
Yeah.
Starting to get a little old, you say 22, that didn't seem like it was that long ago, but here we are in 25.
2.5 years, since we purchased, and there's even some, earlier than that.
Yeah. And so we are starting to see some users, it might be early access, but on the forums, you can go Google it. It's not hidden. Seeing that Ford's releasing BlueCruise 1.4 to pushing out to some trucks. So I've seen that. I don't know which version the 2 or 3 trucks that I have done is actually on, because when you read this, this goes from left to right as you gain things, as that you have everything on the left tabs as you move to the right. I either had 1.2, 1.3, or 1.4, and I think it was 1.2 or 1.3, because it sure felt a lot different on the driving performance, staying in my lanes, not disconnecting as much as it did when I had it before. So I don't know if I was and that's the thing, when you're doing FDRS updates, that's how I got these, is I have FDRS and then we enabled it with ForScan. So I went from 1.0 to at least 1.2, if not 1.3. The lane change assist, the in-lane repositioning comes with 1.2. That I used it all day today. That really is a big improvement. I don't know that I have 1.4. There's no way to know unless you get that OTA that says this is 1.4 when you're doing FDRS updates. You can't just look at the update, because I don't know if everybody's just completely clear. For those of out there listening, when you take your truck to Ford and they do updates and you say, hey, I want OTA 10.1, my buddy down the street or the guys on the forums have got it. They have no idea what you're talking about.
No clue.
Yep. A series of modules, and all they can do is push the new update to that module. And they won't do that for free. If you just want those, you're going to pay for it. The reason they would do that is,
but it's very, very rare.
Right. You can maybe, give the guy a bottle of Jack Daniels out the back door and maybe he'll hook you up, kind of thing. But you got to know somebody. But that's something that with FDRS, if you had the cable, if the dang cable wasn't so expensive, I think more guys would attempt it, because it's not that difficult. But anyhow, I don't know that I have 1.4, but it's starting to roll out. Now, 1.5, I haven't seen that on any Lightnings anywhere yet. I know Mach E in 25 is going to have that, and that's that
Yeah.
automatic. Either already has it or is going to have it. Do you know, Jace, if they
So
have
I
it?
believe 1.5 will ship on the 2025 Lightnings Mach E's from the factory. We have not heard the confirmation about Lightning yet. If I could guess, I would guess that Lightning will ship with 1.4. That's sort of what Ford did last year, so I would sort of take that as what they kind of will do this year. Lightning always seems to be just a little bit behind when it comes to BlueCruise. Remember that Lightning also not all trims ship with BlueCruise hardware, which is now the case for Mach E. So that they treat them a little bit differently. Mach E also ships with all of the phone as a key hardware, where Lightning does not.
I feel attacked.
Yeah, sorry, Chris. We are always rubbing it in for you.
No phone is key. No BlueCruise.
You've got the cheapest Lariat in the world.
It is.
You really
Lariat. It's really just that I have nice seats in the straight.
Yeah.
That's really
And
it.
you have ventilated seats too, right?
And
They are
XLT
ventilated.
with some nice seats.
Yeah, folding mirror, sliding, and I've got the bar in the back, right? It's all those little things.
Ford has always done this ever since I've been building trucks since 02. The model lines you get the Lariat in the F250 and the Super Duty. You get the Lariat Ultimate, Extra. There's all these levels, and you can get a Lariat more loaded than a base Platinum sometimes, depending on options and how you order it out. And that's been an interesting. The last 3 XLTs that I've had have been leather trucks. These are just 5 liters and EcoBoost. They've been leather trucks with backup cameras, reverse cameras, as many or more options than a Lariat has. So, and those are really worth the money because they're considerably cheaper new. So
they are trying to really streamline this on both sides, like Ford Blue and Model E. They are really trying to streamline the choice of trim and the choice within even the trims, right? So it'll be interesting to see how far they go with that, especially on the blue side, because the blue side still kind of is much more customizable than the Model E or Lightning side. But yeah, it should be interesting kind of where they if Model E will, or if Lightning will kind of follow the Mach E where it's really limited, or we'll kind of keep some of the options. So it'll be interesting. But yeah, I think if I could guess, I'm going to guess 2025 Lightning will ship with 1.4. Maybe we'll get lucky and we'll see 1.5. That would be awesome. But I'm going to guess 1.4 on that.
But in the big scheme of things, I don't mind reaching up and touching that turn signal. It's not, I can't see how unless 1.5 has something else big, I don't see how it's going to be a big thing to automatically lane change for me. I know.
Yep, I completely agree.
To me, I do like having the where I can touch the button or the turn signal and move over. I used it 15 times today, and it is nice. If you're not paying attention, and heaven help us, pay attention when you're driving, but if you put the turn signal on and there's a car beside you in your blind spot that you missed, the truck didn't. It's going to wait to get over. So that's nice with that 1.2 up version.
Yep. I remember I drove 1.3 for the first time in Detroit on a Mach E. I think this was about a year ago, maybe about a year and a half ago, but it was excellent. Stayed in the lane. You'll notice that, maybe where there might be some like a, one line for, 50 feet or so, or 100 feet, where before 1.0 would maybe disengage or just switch down to hands-on. You'll notice that BlueCruise, stays engaged. It seems like it only really needs one line in multiple places to be able to hold steady, which was not necessarily the case before. So I'm excited to see it roll out to a lot of trucks. The one thing I will say, the one caveat, I have not seen a 24 receive the 1.4 update yet. So the only ones that we have seen posted on the forums are 22s and 23s. So
yeah, and I gotta tell you, Ford's bad about that. And I love Ford. I love all my Ford friends. But man, the OTA updates on these things, like when you buy the truck, the software you got for some of these things, that's the software you're gonna have. I mean, there's a few updates, of course, that have come and some updates along the way. But in terms of like these model release jump steps, the 22 and the 23 are very similar. Then the 24 has those things like the charging on the driver display and Pro Power that can run when the truck is off, which would be great for someone like our friend Ben Westby it's great for him, so it's not,
sure.
I don't think it would be on the clock while it's doing that. And so there's these little features, and like we don't have those. I don't understand why not. And then so for the 25, there's some added features even still where I'll bring them up. I think now would be a good time to kind of show those. They've added some cool things for the 25. And let me click on one of these here. And so what this does, this is one of my favorites, which is an obscure use case in fairness, but you can adjust the charge level. And for me, when I first got my Lightning, I did not have a charger yet. And so my idea was I was going to use the dryer plug. And, at this point, and this has got to be the case for a lot of people. You're new to EV, like you don't realize,
well, not just EV either, Chris. It's just electrical in general. They think I got a 32 amp plug, I can do 32 amps.
Yes. Yeah. And the Lightning portable charger was 30 amps because it was, it was lowered down compared to the Mach E. But yeah, I thought, okay, I've got a 30 amp, EVSE that comes with it, mobile charger. I can plug it right into my dryer with an adapter, and I'm good to go until I figure out, because I was still trying to like watch Tom Malogny videos and what charger am I going to get. The Grizzle E was a big one. The Tesla wall connector was a big one. Ford had theirs of their own. And because I got the standard range, it didn't come with the big one that the extended range has got. So I'm like, oh, this is no problem. I'll just use this. But you can't, and you couldn't dial it down, and there was nothing you could do. So that wasn't safe. And so like I really quickly had to go, and I was like, do I get an Amazon solution? And then I would watch Tom's videos and be like, I don't buy these cheap Amazon ones, and
I did the same thing. Because I had some places I wanted to be a 24 amp instead of 30. And it's just, they're all Chinese, and who knows?
Yeah. Yep. That's exactly the case. So I think that's one of those things where I really like that because, I've got solar.
Chris, what was that you were sharing? Was that actually from a screenshot from a 24?
It was. That was a
25.
That was a 25 Mach E screenshot.
Wow. What else you got for us?
Yeah, I know on that because you can do
I haven't
that.
seen these yet, so
you can do that in the app with the Ford Charge Station Pro, and you have been able to since it came out. But you have to have the.
Correct.
That's one of the reasons why I keep that one, and I'm probably not changing to another charger. I love the way they put it out. Like guys talk crap on that, how big it is, and it's just not worth it on the 24s for sure. But I think it's the best charger going to me.
Yeah, and I think the last thing on that last shot should lift up a little bit longer. But the other thing, again, super obscure, but if I've got a power outage and my solar is producing 5 kilowatts of energy, but I'm only using a kilowatt for the house, I'd like to be able to dial my truck down and plug it in off 240 because you have a lot less losses compared to a 110. If you can get 2-3 kilowatts, at 240 and dial that down way down, and you're going to get less losses. You're at 120, you're losing like 20% of your energy in the conversion, and you're down to like 12 if you're doing 240. So little things like that, because otherwise that's wasted energy. If power's out, I have no grid. It can't send the energy back. And so I'd love to have a place to store it. And how often am I going to do that? Like single digit number of times, right? But as a true American, I want to know that I can.
So the big question is going to be, when will we see these updates for the legacy stuff, the 22, 23, and 24? I mean, who knows?
Track record is not good, right? Because here we are with the 24s that have all these cool things, and we haven't seen them for 22 or 23. You would think that you would see them eventually, but yeah, it'd be, if these are important to you, I think the 25 is the way to go. This is the next thing, is just it's a subtle little thing, but in the charge settings on the truck, or in this case again, Mach E screenshot, there are two different settings. So you can have your daily. I'm charging to 90% daily, 80% daily. If you're Kyle Connor, you're charging to 50% daily. That's how he rolls. But I'm going to go on a trip. So then you just click the trip, and it's a one-time trip up to 100%. And then it, resets back to your daily.
But you can sort of do in the app, but you can't necessarily do on the truck as easily as this. You can, but yeah, there's multiple clicks as opposed to just a slider. Yeah.
Yep. And then on that same screen, the thing that it'll also do when you're actually plugged in charging, This is kind of a zoomed in shot of the screen. This will show you now if you're AC charging, you can see that it shows your amps and your charge speed.
Nice.
So that'll be on that screen as well. Now, if you're DC charging, it will only show you kilowatts. It will not show you your amps. I personally would love to see them still show amps, because one of the big misnomers, again, early on when I had my truck, it was like this. Well, now they've improved their charging now to where you can get 190 kilowatts. 177 is the most that I've had with the standard range. But when you're early to EVs, you don't understand the relationship between amps and volts and pack voltage. Normal people don't know this stuff. I certainly didn't know this stuff.
Divided by 1,000, that gives you your kilowatts.
Yep. So what ends up happening is, I would go and pull up. I would always hear this. Hey, the Lightning charges to 150. So don't be one of those guys that sits at the 350 charger and takes it up with your 150 kilowatt charging. But then you learn that's not the case. I can't get 150 out of a 150 kilowatt charger. My pack voltage isn't high enough. The amperage isn't high enough. I need 250 amps, 350 amps. I need those chargers.
That's a good topic.
500 amps. I'm sorry. Yeah, so I would love to see the amps, because that's going to tell me what's limited right now. Is my charger limited? Is my truck limited? How many amps am I pulling?
If you get in Car Scanner, there actually is a max requested that the truck will request, depending on the pack voltage and the temperatures. Like when I got in it this morning, it said 108 was max that I could have charged if I'd have plugged in right then. But when I got home, it said 188. So, and that was without preconditioning, just from running the truck. So it'd be nice if you would know that when you pulled in. But most people, Ford doesn't necessarily want to give us all this information. And I think enough of us have complained that they're starting to give things like this on the screen. But Chris, you mentioned that a while ago. But if you look like, I don't know if you can see that very well, but even in the app, you can just drag that bar and slide that over. Yeah. And adjust it. And then it shows you your details. Like my truck's charging right now, and it's probably blurry, but it shows you the rate, the amps, all that. I mean, and we're getting some of that now in the app, but you just can't do that as much from the truck. I know if I grab that bar and drag it, it'll say, do you want to do this one time or do you want to change it? So that is good.
They're definitely adding things. I was thinking about it today, some of the heated seats to the app. I mean, Ford is definitely adding things. It's just, I think, the pace that people, want to see more of, and especially the features on the truck side, right? Like the app moves fairly quickly. Obviously, we want some, zone lighting and pro power, but in general, the last year has been a huge, update when we've gotten down to, Ford past 4 to 5. So like we're getting there, but it's that pace of the updates, I think that frustrates people, and kind of the lack of transparency, right? Like I think that's just, if we had a schedule that could kind of explain to people, maybe what the plan is, even if that plan were, to change. I still think that, that transparency would go a long way for people. And there were a lot of things that popped up, like the 12 volt, percentage and the BMS was off. And so that kind of, set Ford back for quite a long time, in my opinion, because that was basically a recall campaign, and we had to get everybody back on the right track and making sure that the BMS was properly recording 12 volt, percentage, right?
Yeah. So like that brings us to a good segue here, Jace, because you talk about, how do I get these updates? Like we don't know the transparency or the lack of transparency is why is my 22 still on 4.4 or 4.8 or 6.1. Like some of these guys are sitting out there not knowing. Some of them don't care. And the guys that don't care, great, just drive the truck because it's going to perform. But I can tell you there's a huge difference jumping in a truck that had 4.1 to 10.1. It feels like a completely different truck. There's just so many little things that it's done that it doesn't have the bings and the bongs. It doesn't have the Android auto clicks. You don't get that. There's so much of that. And like this here, to know that you're going to get updates early on, they needed a lot higher percentage, and most guys didn't have it. So there's a couple of things you can do. Number one, drive your truck more than 5 minutes a day. Some of these guys are 5 minutes and they're out. You're not charging the battery from the high voltage through the DC to DC converter to the 12 volt like you should. As they release new updates, it gives a better performance on that, but it's not game-changing performance. So it's not like you never have to worry about it. So I would say, number one, if you haven't gotten the OTA updates in a while, I think there's a few things you can do. And number one, that's put a trickle charger on your truck. It may sound stupid, but if you want updates, just throw a 10 amp NoCo Genius or something that just trickle charge it. Throw it in the garage, and that'll let that thing charge up. You can get, like we've talked about last week, a little Bluetooth scanner and car scanner app, and look, check the state of health or state of charge of the 12-volt battery to know where you're actually at. And you're going to see them in 80 to 100% range. That's normal cycling, depending on how much usage the 12-volt system has. But the other thing that we had is, I think we all saw years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, that BMS update, the CSP, that little, it goes on your negative ground cable on the right side as you open your hood behind that panel. That was faulty, and it was reporting data wrong. And so they replaced them, but everybody thinks, oh, I'm going to get this and I'm going to get all the updates. Well, number one, Ford doesn't release them like that. They release them out in batches, so they don't brick everybody's truck over the weekend in case there was something through the product validation that they missed. But if you're still not getting them and you think you should be, you might try this. Number one, just disconnect your 12-volt battery for 10 minutes. Just unhook it and let it sit there and kind of reset. It's like, how many of us have a PC, Apple, or a Windows, or a phone that you don't have to reset ever? Very few. You need to restart your phone every month or whatever. You need to restart your computer every so often just to kind of clear out the cache and get things. The truck has the same types of things. So reset, pulling the disc into the 12-volt battery is good. And it can create some issues. Like Mike G is one of the big F150 forum guys here. It messes with the BMS values. So in order to fix that, you need to flash the high beams, turn it on to accessory, not started. You want your green button flashing on your start button. Flash the high beams 5 times, and then step on the brake pedal 3 times. That's going to relearn and reset that BMS. To let it relearn, it takes a couple of days to actually relearn, but it'll check the cycles, and it kind of reconfigures your truck to know, okay, where is my 12-volt voltage and amperage actually at? It's a good thing to do. It takes 10 seconds, and you can do it in your truck. I wouldn't do it all the time. It's not so like if I'm not getting an update, I don't do it all the time, but I've reset my BMS probably 3 or 4 times since I've owned these trucks, just going in and checking it. It's something you definitely want to do if you replace the 12-volt battery. Most of you have warranty and you're getting it done. But if you decide, oh, I can do the battery myself, it's a couple $100. If for some reason they don't warranty it, as soon as you do it, put that accessory mode on, flash that high beams 5 times, step on that brake pedal 3 times, and then you're going to see the battery icon in the red side. It'll start to flash 3 times after that's complete. That's giving you a confirmation that, hey, I'm reset now. So,
and I'll be honest, the first time you told me what to do, I thought you were messing with me. I'm like, oh, this guy's
crazy.
What can I get Chris to do? Like, well, I can tell him anything.
Yeah, film it for me too.
Because you see, like, I don't know if you guys follow Chevy Dude on YouTube. He's got this punch the volume, turn it up, and it resets the odometer to 45 miles on a new Denali. Like, it's bull crap. It's for views, but no, this is a real thing. And I know it sounds flaky, but you won't know that it happens other than you get that 3 flash confirmation. But it actually does reset the BMS. It's a way to do it fast, so you don't have to hook up to it with FDRS. You can do it through FDRS or a scan tool, but this is an easy way to do it.
And really, I'd say the majority of the time, from what I really see, is that the most important part to remember is that Ford sends these out in batches, okay? And it can be very confusing. We see people go, I'm only on 4.0. Like, it sounds, you're on 10 now, and that sounds like it's, 25, 30, updates away. And really, it's not as far as it sounds, right? We went to 4, and then we went to 6, and then we went from 6 to basically 10, I think, wasn't it? I don't think we even had anything in the middle of those. So, and there was, of course, some, a couple, priority. They used to call them priority updates. Now they've seemed to move away from that name. But, some are inhibit, some are non-inhibit, which is a whole nother topic for the newbies. Inhibit update is where your truck is undrivable for a certain amount of time. Usually that's a larger update. The non-inhibit updates are usually sync related updates. So they'll just, kind of sometimes you'll actually see them do it in the background while you're driving. We've had that happen a few times. And so that's kind of the difference between those two. But really, the sync ones, you don't have to worry too much about meeting the criteria, as in the 12 volts. It used to be back in the day more specific. Parking brake on, lights off. Blah blah blah. Now they've kind of chilled out a little bit on that a little bit. You basically just need to.
I've never done any of that, by the way, Jace.
Yeah,
every OTA, I just let it happen.
We had some back in very, very early days where like one time I tried it, it didn't work. And I knew my 12 volt was over 80%, but then I pulled the parking brake and it worked. So now it doesn't really, that doesn't seem to be a thing anymore. It's really much more seamless.
To be like voodoo. Those
it really
early
was
22 days.
I think probably part of it was the BMS, reporting wacky things, and that's, I think, part of what it all was about. Is one time the BMS would report properly, even if you were at 90, it'd say 70. And then the next time it'd say, oh, nope, it is at 90. Yeah. So I think it was kind of all over the place from what I heard from Ford. So, but, the differences in the updates, I think just it's important to remember that if you haven't had an update in maybe 2 years or, year and a half or maybe even a year, you might have a problem. If you haven't had an update in, let's say, 5 months to like 7 months, you might be okay. It stinks, unfortunately, that's the case, but that's just kind of where where Ford is and in their cadence of how they send it. Normally when I see people that are like, I'm not receiving OTA updates, it's not normally that something is wrong with the truck. It's normally that Ford just unfortunately hasn't released one for, their model year. And then there's jobs within the model years, and there's distinctions with build dates. So they really do kind of, go all the way down. And then we have to remember that, if you have a Sync 4A truck, you might not necessarily see the Sync 4 vice versa, really updates. So BlueCruise, non-BlueCruise vehicles like Chris may not see a BlueCruise. Yeah.
I was just going to go. That was even Sync 4A has variations, because I've got Sync 4A, but I don't have the Sync 4A that has the BlueCruise. And I know like that the 12-inch screen is inherently different. And there are certain things that it's not capable of doing. I think, for example, like streaming and YouTube, the entertainment stuff, it just can't do it. There's no update to make it do it.
That's the thing, though. This all gets confusing and frustrating, because if you come from a Tesla of any product, you get in the car. If there's an update available, as long as your SIM card and you got connectivity, it'll pop up with that little yellow download button, and it'll go every time. They don't wait. They must have a bigger team that vets out those software updates. So coming from that,
I think the architecture, from centralized chip architecture, from a very basic standpoint, their fundamentals are
Ford's going in
vertically
and modules.
And that makes it tougher.
And network, and it pushes it to a central, and then that communicates it out. It's a little different setup than.
And unfortunately, I think that BMS issue pushed Ford to make OTA smaller, and so they were and I think they still are concerned to this day about killing people's 12 volts during the middle of an update. And I understand that. I don't think it's as big of a problem as it was. I completely agree. I don't think it,
because when you're doing FDRS updates
now,
when you're doing FDR updates, Jace, I've done a ton of them. Like the first truck I did for Joe's truck, that on my YouTube channel, it took 13 hours, and I had it at 40 amps on my big charger the entire time, watching the state of health and watching that. You can't just buy a little Noco Genius 10, which is where I started thinking that was going to work, and keep that up. It pulls too much power. And the reason the reason you have to have an external power source when you're doing these updates through FDRS, number one, the OTAs are doing much smaller packages than an FDRS. You might be doing an APM module that takes 2 hours. The OTAs don't work exactly the same way. They're scheduling time and what ones, but with the FDRS, you might have a 2-hour update, and the DC to DC voltage from 400 volts to 12 volts is not on during that time. So there's nothing in that battery. And these batteries they're that big. They're not the big, I at times I've thought I'm going to go put 1,000 cranking amp out of a diesel in one of these and wire it up. But the Lightning wouldn't like that, because it doesn't know how to handle. The software's not designed for that. That's why I think the Ohmni
You'll
batteries,
actually
like in Teslas or whatever, they struggle because it's not rated for it.
Mhm. You'll actually see in the app now, it used to be kind of back in the day, should I be charging during an OTA? Should I not be? Really, the only rule is you can't be DCFCing during an update. But
Yeah.
now you'll actually see in the app has kind of updated, throughout the year. It used to kind of show, that it was doing the update. Now it kind of just says waiting to charge, and so it will kind of show you like the truck is, even though it's plugged in DC or AC, it is not charging, and it will kind of show
Correct.
you software update in progress, nothing available. So that has kind of updated and changed, which is nice. But that gives you your indicator right there that even if you have it plugged in, level 1, level 2, whatever, it is not charging that 12 volt. There is no way to charge that 12 volt other than, like Martin said, plugging into a trickle charger, which
and it's important when you're doing that
day.
too. You want to be careful where you hook that trickle charger up when you're getting these updates. You want to be
That's a great point.
Don't go directly to the lead posts on the battery. The positive side, it's fine. There's only one, but you want to be on that little screw with the bolt that then goes through that little black box that hooks to your negative cable. That is on the input side of the BMS, and that BMS is important to monitor that. If you don't, it doesn't know what you're doing. The truck will never get reported out that I'm seeing some voltage. So you want to
where's
make
that?
sure you connect that.
Are you behind the panel in the front, or are you on the left-hand side?
Behind the panel in the front. I don't even go to the jump start connections. I go straight to the battery, but I'll see if I can pull up a picture. But that I go right to that and make sure I'm on the right connections. And it tells you in FDRS where to connect it in the Ford Tech manual, is where I'm getting this from. It shows you where to connect it. So you have to connect it in the right spot, or you're kind of lying to the truck.
Yeah. From what I've been told too, this is an important distinction. From what I was told, you will receive, if you are due to receive an update, let's say, and your 12 volt, you haven't driven the truck for 5 weeks and your 12 volt is at 50%, your truck will receive that update. However, it will not install that update. So your truck doesn't wait. I get this question a lot, and it came up, a lot about a year ago. You are getting that update. You will see that update, but the update, and it will attempt to download and install. It won't complete install until you get that 12 volt up. People would say, well, I'm not getting updates at all. You'll get them, but your installation of said update is not going to necessarily be complete. And the problem with Ford necessarily is you might not get another chance for another week or two, because you can't just yourself try to re-download said update. Ford doesn't work that way. So you have to basically wait until your turn comes up again, which I think sometimes leads to frustration, because sometimes they'll then pause an update and people will be like, I'm stuck on this update for not completed. I know it's happened to me for 5, 6, 7 weeks. But little do they know, the update was paused on Ford's end. So it can get very confusing for the user, and and the end there. So hopefully we can kind of fix those.
Which is why I keep saying to everybody, if you're going to get an update, you see one that's coming, don't just be at work and click it in the parking lot. Get home that night. If you can buy you a little battery charger, a 10 amp, 20 amp is fine, but you want to move this red connector out of the way.
Especially if it's cold.
This is the bolt I was talking about. You want to connect it to this side, either this metal part of the cable or what. Don't be over here on this, because you're bypassing that BMS sensor. So that's the key, is to be on this side. And it again, it tells you that when you're doing FDRS updates to connect to there. So that's going to be a good spot to connect. So this side to the left on the battery, and on this positive, because when you take the positive off, it's just straight to the battery. There's no magic in that. But this little sensor is not specific to Lightnings, by the way. F150s. All Fords have
Bronco,
that. They're monitoring the battery voltage. So
I think that's just the extra little bit, is that we get a lot of these little background updates, and I think a lot of those, when they're not very descriptive, they're almost like little bits and pieces of a larger update that have to happen first, because you can't do all of it at once, because the 12 volt just isn't robust enough to do it. And most people aren't going to go and put it on a tender or trickle charger or something, or, to your point, Martin, you need more than a trickle charger. So they're just not going to have that. Mary, who lives next door, she's just not. So that it is tougher. And I think the next generation is going to be a whole lot different. But as far as this one that we're working on, and these modules and the restrictions on them,
another good illustration of what I was talking about.
Yeah.
So you can see the
Yep.
circle in blue, and then the red X's are no's. So I've seen it go both ways here. I've connected to both and not had any trouble. But you're
Yeah,
right. The
it's
average
safe.
lady's not going to do that. But we're not talking about the average people because most people don't even care about updates. A lot they just drive their truck. For those of us that are kind of data nerds or geeks, and we really want that newest, latest, greatest, even if it's a small little tweak, this is how you help the ability to do that. So.
And if you
Left
really
side.
think you have an issue, take it to the dealer. Like I've seen so many people
Yeah,
who
the dealer
like I
can
went
reset
a
that.
year and a half, and there used to be a thing where if your truck you purchased it used or sometimes even new, people bought a pro extended range and they would be stuck in fleet mode. And with fleet
Yep.
mode, you don't get any OTAs. And
Yep.
so, I'm not sure if
Demo
that's
mode,
per
yep.
se a thing anymore, but it used to be a thing. And, who knows? Maybe you bought one, 2 or 3 years ago now, and you never knew it was in fleet mode. So, there's always a chance that maybe you have some off issue, or I've seen APIM, where your APIM wasn't, working or properly, the software wasn't properly installed. So we've seen weird things like that where the PIM needs replaced or whatever. But
Well,
for
if you're
the
not, another thing too, Jake, to follow up with that, if you're not getting those updates, take it into the dealer and ask them to do a over-the-air inhibit reset. That is a function in FDRS that you can do, and it basically resets that module. If there's a problem, if it's hung up, it'll reset it, and then should start getting that. Now that doesn't mean you're going to go home and get them that day. Just like you said, it's VIN specific. They roll them out in batches. I know before this 10.3 and BlueCruise 1.4 started rolling last couple of weeks to special people. It's not just everybody. We haven't seen updates in probably since Thanksgiving or before. It's been a while.
They usually kind of take a holiday break. They'll kind of do a big push with BlueCruise. Usually, I think it's to meet some deadlines, if you want me to be honest, because then they can say at least they shipped it to somebody, to meet the deadline. But we saw that in 2023 and 2024. But I think it's they make a big push and then they take a holiday break, and then it takes a little bit to get back going. And I don't think they want to ship a bunch of real big updates necessarily, at least maybe an EAP, but to the general public right before the holidays when everybody's traveling and stuff. I think they try to be cognizant of that.
Yeah, you don't want all these people out there broke down over Thanksgiving trying to get somewhere and that'll just put bad press on Ford, which we don't need. We have enough of that with negativity in EV world anyway.
Yeah.
One last update from the 25, which kind of like you were saying with the traveling folks, this one will be one that the folks that are doing those holiday travels are going to appreciate. They are going to make it so that the adapter is locked into the truck. And I don't remember if it was on this podcast or the other one where I joked that I didn't want to walk away from the truck. And so I used my old A to Z adapter rather than my newer one, because I didn't want the new one to get stolen.
So how are they doing that? Are they inhibiting that button on when phone as a key is away, or your fob's away?
You've got to have your both. Yeah, the key fob, either the key fob or the phone as key has to be in close proximity to the charge port door, and then you can press that button and unlock it. And so
I'm sorry, I'm going to hammer Ford for a minute because I'm a test engineer for John Deere. This should have happened day one. I mean, I'm sorry, even to unplug somebody's truck, you shouldn't be able to unplug that if you're away from the truck.
Yeah, and it almost implied, because there is a picture of a lock on the button. If you don't know better, you might think that function was already there. But then kind of full circle on the conversation, the frustrating part here is the folks that buy the 25 are going to get this functionality, and how many years, if ever, will it take before I get it? And it's like, it's there. These are the things that are so frustrating, because to your point, Martin, with the Tesla, if something cool comes out on a Tesla, I'm pretty much going to get it, unless it's one of those hardware restrictions, which are pretty rare. Right. And there's only a few examples. Like, I know there's some older Teslas that can't get CCS charging, for example, still. You have to be careful if you buy the wrong one. But even then, there are updates. You can bring it to Tesla. They can put in a kit, and they can make it so you can get, or Martin rebuilds, right? And so these are things where I think people, and I would love for it, if you're listening, if you're one of the 29 people. Shout out 29 people. Ford, if you're on here, I'd love to have one of the software engineers come on and maybe educate us and
I really would
tell us,
too.
because I think it would go a long way to. Here's the other thing too. I just want honesty, right? If I'm never going to get it because there's a reason it can't, because the 22s and 23s lack a certain module or a certain ability or a certain thing, at least then I can just shut up about it and be just.
I'll be honest. I don't think there's anything that we can't get unless it comes down to, like, let's say maybe BlueCruise 1.5 or something. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But I think the reason why we don't hear that it's not coming is because I think it's possible, and I think they're working through those. But like we know the frustration is the timing on it all. But anything that you've showed me tonight, that even the locking, I don't think it's impossible. I just think it's a matter of resources and when it could be done. But I think that's why we don't necessarily hear no's, is because I don't think I don't think it's a no. I think it's more of a yes, but when.
There's different rollouts of updates. There's actually rev level numbers in FDRS of these updates. So, Chris, if I roll BlueCruise 1.4 to your truck, let's assume you had it for a second. That's going to look different on a standard range than it is for mine, because the rev levels, it's doing things different based on not necessarily that's a perfect example, but a standard range truck's going to the rev level of the update's going to look a little different from a extended range. It just is. So coming from the test engineer world, I would be right in line with what Ford's philosophy is on rolling these out without thoroughly vetting out an update before we roll it. So the 25s, they are actively working on. So, and I don't want to give away too much for John Deere, because and I'm not going to get myself in trouble here, but we have two different sides. There's the design engineer side that built it up front, and then you've got the engineers that do what we call continuous improvement after the fact. We're rolling stuff out later, and those are two separate groups. I don't know if Ford is set up that way, but
Right.
The guys that are rolling things out later, they're dealing with warranty claims as well. So the guys we're sitting here complaining that we don't have a button to lock our thing in, but they're trying to deal with the warranty claims from the guys that have module failures. They're probably a little more important than our button.
Yep.
What is it? Veruca salt, right? I want it now. I don't care how. I want it now, right? It's just no.
Yeah. And I've thought about this kind of a couple ways. I've kind of gone back and forth. I think sort of like the CSP. Like, it gave us so much with BlueCruise just by simply visiting the dealer. Now, does it make sense for every? Exactly. I know. And I think they do that on purpose, obviously, though, because I don't think they want people rushing into the dealer, right? Like, for the simple, imaging thing, right? But at the same time, if you could offer people these updates, these big updates, and I know they want to roll these out by OTA, like, that's the goal, right? We want these to come via OTA. But if you can't meet the stated goals, maybe you allow the people who want them to go to the dealer and get it done. And maybe they do it when it's their, when it's the 20,000 maintenance or the 60,000, or maybe they do it mobile, but is it better to offer people it, or is it worse? I guess I don't know. I kind of see it both ways, but I think it could quell some of the frustration for that some people experience, because we would love to see the charge speed in the display. I think that's a huge one. I would go to the dealer tomorrow if they said we can do that, we can install it for an hour's worth of work. Boom, I'd do it.
There's so many of these. Kind of the promise almost of EV was this idea of OTAs, which we know exist and we know they're there, and we do get a lot of these little behind the scene things that you may not even notice, stabilization updates and things. But then I think where there's all these. Look, my life isn't that dramatically impacted because I don't know my DC charge speed that I only use 10 times a year anyway, and is my life really impacted that much for the locking adapter that, again, I only use 10 times a year? Yeah, it's not the end of the world, but it's almost like this. You want that kind of. I don't care. I will forever be mocking karaoke. I mean,
I didn't see when they posted this.
Could there be anything less that I need than karaoke?
This was the 30th. So this is the next. OTA that we're all going to
will be
want and
available
all
from the
want.
factory. Okay.
Yeah, this is Ford Motor Company posting about the 2025 Lightning is now going to ship with the in the connected navigation. The Tesla chargers are going to show up, and if you look, I read through this. It shows up as a little NACS adapter. If you have this fast charging adapter tab, this new button shows up.
Mhm.
And so you'll get this little, now what I'm not seeing, and I've went through this quite a bit before the show, is you still don't have a way to say, I want to prefer or only go to Tesla. It's still going to throw the entire Blue Oval Ford Charge network in there. And I think that's fine for most Lightning owners. You're just going to stop where the truck wants you to stop. Most people don't want to overthink this, but why not throw a little preference in there that says prefer, like they say 3 stars on Tesla, 2 stars on EA, and 1 on EVgo, and then everybody else behind that. ARBP, or a Better Route Planner, does that right now. You can go in and say, stop at Tesla first, unless I can't make it, and then go to this, and then we'll do others. And I plan all my trips that way. For me, I can stop at Tesla for one reason now. It's cheaper. It's cheaper than everybody else.
I wonder if the issue with that is, though, that Tesla has still not opened them all. But I mean, I think it's 2 separate issues.
But even here, they talk about that. They talk about that in here.
The other issue is too, though, that they have to work with this NAVs provider to write code, and so I actually was tweeting about this today. I don't see how Ford doesn't bring NAV in-house. I don't see how they can continue using a NAV provider and working in conjunction with them to write the code, because
I want to talk to the data analytics guy and see how many people are still using it, Jace. How many people have jumped ship to CarPlay or Android Auto because of this?
I bet the vast majority have. Yeah, and the thing with any of these is
we can barely use it. But yeah, I mean, with Android Auto, absolutely.
I mean, I'm a big. You guys both know this. I'm a big Ford. I love this system. I think it's got its quirks. The problem with it is with Tesla coming on board without this new update that they're showing us here, I'm out. Because you guys have seen my video that I put out on how to add Tesla supercharger stops in the Ford navigation. It is a cluster trying to do it, and you don't precondition. They don't put them in there, and it gives you your destination on your UI, on your instrument cluster, but you don't. It takes so much time to do that. When I posted that video, people are going, yeah, I can get it done, but holy crap, I don't want to be a brain surgeon to navigate my truck.
Yep.
Yeah, it just needs to be. I think it's frustrating. I think when the examples are out there of what good looks like, and you just want to point to an engineer and say, do that. Like in the next 6 months, do that.
It's just those fundamentals, again, like how it's constructed and how I've charged at that Taylor, Michigan Tesla charger actually, and Taylor Ford. Putting it, it's the how it was fundamentally created. I mean, we're going to need some changes, with the next gen. I think we know that. But I was thinking about this earlier today. I really do think that is another part of the reason. I've done that round tree Ypsilanti too. That's funny. Many times. Yeah. But I think, that's why we're going to see some of these delays too, is that we need to get some of these things fixed and figured out before, we release another product, so I think there's some work to be done, on both ends. And, this is all part of the reason why it's delayed. Again, Lightning was small team, small budget. It's great. It's an amazing truck for, I think Doug Field has said this again and again. That's why he came to Ford, because they did such good work with such a small team and small budget with what they released in the first gen. But there needs to be major fundamental architectural changes when it comes to second gen. I think we know that, and these are the types of reasons I think why we see some of the slower things to be fixed.
Now, Martin, with something like this, with the navigation, once that's out there, does that exist in FDRS? Is that something you can push?
I mean, they're rolling this via OTA at some point. So normally what happens in my experience, because I have the BlueCruise 1.2, 3, or 4, we don't know exactly which one. what I normally see in the forums, the guys who are in BlueCruise and in FDRS every day, they'll roll updates manually, and then, oh, I got this new update, and then they'll tell the world about it. And Ford releases those on FDRS pretty early, and then they roll them out OTA later on. That's how I got mine early. So I was tempted before the podcast tonight to go out and update the 23 and see if this new Tesla Supercharger update is there, because if it was, I would have the very first Lightning with the Tesla Supercharger update in the navigation. But I didn't have time, and I'm planning to do that next couple of weeks anyway, to see what else is new and what else is out there, because this is a game changer for me. I will go back to the factory navigation over Android, Google EV routing, because of the towing. For me, I can't tow a trailer and it adjusts with Google EV routing, and I hate that. It still thinks I've got that full range. It does. That's the one thing about EV routing that I don't like. Other than that, I run it all day today. If I'm going to run to Tulsa, to be able to set destinations and add and change, Google and CarPlay both just do a good job with hands-free, adding stops, removing stops. They do a really good job of estimating ETA battery percentages. But when I'm on a road trip and I got a trailer hooked on, I need to know that navigation's accounting for that. And it doesn't. Even on the trip when I first updated, my first experience was that 1,100-mile trip taking Joe's truck from Kansas back to Florida. I was running 80 on a 50-degree day in a 20-mile-an-hour headwind. The truck was getting 1.5. Google had no clue, and it was not updating it live. It wasn't pulling that. And so if we ever do get a Ford engineer in here and he wants to talk and we can be candid, I'm going to tell him from one engineer to another, bro, give me a 15-minute average of efficiency times kilowatts remaining. I don't give a crap about all these calculations we're trying to do, because the only thing that matters is that efficiency number that you're seeing. And I don't care about it over the hour I've been running. I care about it the last 15 minutes that we've been running. 15 minutes is a good number. If you're headed north and you got a south wind, you've been getting 2.3 at 65 miles an hour, and all of a sudden you turn east and you're going across it, it's going to drop that efficiency, and your truck's not going to reflect that very quickly because it's doing it over the entire trip. I don't understand. I really want to understand, why do we not give a more real-time, not necessarily instantaneous, but a more real-time guesstimation on arrivals or range?
Martin, what if you reset actually either of you guys, Jason, Martin,
I do it all
both,
the time.
If you reset, won't it recalculate or no?
Yeah, so I'll leave trip 1 for the whole trip, but trip 2, I don't use it as most people. I use it as like a more of a last 5 minutes. I'll reset trip 2 50 times on a trip. If I turn, or if I change, or if we're on a road that was 65 and all of a sudden the speed limit is 75, I reset trip 2. So I'm manually calculating that in my head as we go. But good Lord, who wants to do that? Just let the GOM adjust, and then let I never have let it do the automatic chargers, because number one, it'll route me to a 50 kilowatt charger. For me, those might as well not exist unless there's no other options. I never want to go to a 50 kilowatt charger on a trip unless there's no other options. And I would like for an option in navigation to be only 150 or higher, unless no route can be planned, and then pop up and say your route contains less than 150 chargers, no other route available. That would be very simple to do. But again, Jace, you're talking about this being third party. We all think it's Garmin. I don't know, but I've heard it's Garmin in the background.
It's
back
Garmin.
in the day, Garmin was decent, but geez, Garmin, go take a Google EV school for routing. It's much better.
Yeah. Yep. No, I think
No, go ahead, Jace.
No, go ahead.
Well, so I think the big thing that I take away from all this too is there needs to be different levels, because for the average driver, a lot of this stuff we're talking about is less important, for the folks that are just driving it as a daily driver, as a commuter, as a family vehicle, that aren't doing a lot of road trips in it.
But yet it needs to fit that niche. Like, it needs to be able to be where an 80-year-old could get in if something happened and they need to be able to get to their destination. And
there's still people with paper maps.
happen. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I mean, it's not that the Ford Nav couldn't do it now. I know it could. It's just it could be much better, and it could be much more seamless. And again, I mean, it's hard that we're comparing to Tesla, who has the ultimate vertical integration.
for sure.
It's hard to compare to that. But and I think when charging infrastructure as it improves, we'll get better and better as we go. There'll just be more options, and there'll be, you'll be able to go kind of wherever you want, right? And drive kind
Well,
of as people do now.
you look at it, and I'm not knocking Ford, but you look at it, why would they put resources into something that's selling 1 out of 19 trucks? And that's at best. Tesla, their whole market is the Model S or 3 or Y or X. That's what so it has to be there. You
Yep.
don't need all of this fancy navigation, all this integration, all this stuff on an F-150 EcoBoost or a 5-liter. You just throw up. I mean, if you jump in, Chris, you rented one. You want to take that truck down to LA, throw up Google EV or Google routing or CarPlay and just go.
Yeah,
You don't need
that's what it was, right?
So,
They already had this contract signed for the standard F-150s and the Super Duties and all of that stuff, right? So if you're driving, if you're creating an electric line, you're just going to go to the same vendor that you've already been using. You've got a relationship and contracts with. Most of it is already written. So you add in a couple, Blue Oval charging network stuff in there, and okay, you're good to go with Garmin. And there's nothing wrong with that as a starting point. I just think that now we're to the point of the evolution and maturity as an EV company or company that's doing EVs. I just wish they'd be more aggressive with it. And I'd like there to be different user modes. You have your basic, simple to use interface, and then there just needs to be like a service mode. And in service mode, I want to see all my temperatures, and I want to see my kilowatts and my amps. And that's not something the average person should have on a screen confusing them, but there should be a place to go where I put myself in service mode. It's all there, right? So for those of us that want to see it, there should be a mode
The
to see
good
it.
news is, yeah, I think that's the good news though, is that we do have now a place to see it, right? Like where at least before we had we did not have access to that. There was no way to get it, right? Like at least, and I think that is the pro of Ford, if you will, is that there's always usually at least options, right? Like OBD, there's and it's relatively simple. Like car scanner's easy as pie. I mean, it is easy to get that information. Should it be easier directly, natively from the vehicle? Absolutely. But I am glad that at least, we have the options, because without CarPlay, I mean, we wouldn't, we'd have to whip out a totally different, like use a car scanner on our phone, So, I mean, we're getting there, we're having more options, but, natively, we need some work, but, at least now we have the options, at least.
Yeah, CarPlay and Android Auto are saviors for the interface for the average person, and having the car scanner there is helpful. And I think I'm reminded all the time. I just had a meeting at my. Sometimes I have to pause. So I drive up to work the other night and to see the third shift, and there was a team member who works for Tesla. So he works for me part time, also works for Tesla. And so he knows what EVs are, and he just got a BZ4X. And, within our orbit of people, that would seem like a nonsensical thing, especially for somebody that literally works for Tesla. Why would you get a BZ4X? And he got a really good deal on it. And it is everything he needs in a vehicle. It is absolutely everything that he wants. One of my technicians that works on my machines, he has the is it, I always get confused, the Volt and the Bolt. It's the Volt, I think. The Volt is the battery electric.
The Volt's the hybrid.
Volt is hybrid.
Volt with a V is the hybrid.
Bolt.
And they stopped
so he's
making
got the Bolt.
Yeah,
he's got the Bolt EUV. It's like the bigger of the Bolt.
It's a little bit bigger. Yep.
Great family vehicle. Charges it at home. It's great, right? He just loves
200 miles a day range.
Perfectly fine,
Actually,
especially in the Bay
They're
Area.
more like 250. I mean, it's really a pretty good car.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're living in some of these cities around the Bay Area with these tiny little roads and there's not a freeway in the Bay Area that you're doing 80 miles an hour in there, especially if you're driving your normal 9 to 5, and even on Saturdays you got traffic. So these things have plenty of range for what they're used for. And it's just fine. These user interfaces are fine. Most people don't need any of this stuff that we're talking about. I just like there to be the option for it to exist. And I think when it comes to like the car scanner, I'm so paranoid with all the 12-volt problems I've had. And so it's kind of like the frunk, right? Like we use our frunk all the time because it's an automated frunk that opens and closes by itself. A lot of Tesla people, Rivian people, love to use their frunk. A lot of Tesla people never use their frunk for anything but their portable charger. And I think it's as simple as human nature. The thing doesn't open and close itself.
Absolutely.
My
Nobody's
wife
gonna use
doesn't
that
use the
thing.
Mach E frunk because of that. She and there's no button. She can't just walk up and push something on the front of the car to make it open.
Nope.
Even if she could do it by hand, you're
I
absolutely
I
right.
agree.
I feel like that with Car Scanner, though, is just this great thing. And so I almost never use Car Scanner daily, and I almost never use Better Route Planner unless I'm going on a really long trip, because you got to take the time to put that OBD2 dongle in there
24/7. Never take it out.
Can
Yeah,
you do
ours
that?
are both in 24/7 all the time. You
Really?
can. There's some security risks, but
Oh, yeah.
it's very limited. I mean, you have to have somebody that, it's like somebody walks by you with an RFID reader and you don't have your wallet protect. I mean,
What are the
it's
odds?
or getting the skimmer, I mean, it happens to people, but is somebody going to be next to you and skim your VP, OBD? Probably not, but there are, more intense, protocol OBDs that you can buy
Oh,
if
yeah.
you were concerned about that. You can buy the OBD, I think LX or whatever it is.
The LX has got
And
some
that,
security in it.
yep. So
But
it does like
speaking,
something every few minutes so that you can't, somebody can't, use a
$130.
repeater. Yeah, it's
So-
definitely more expensive. Yeah.
so what we were talking about earlier, though, with the 12-volt battery drain and all these types of things, it's not going to impact that to any degree if you leave
No,
it in
it
all
turns
the
off.
time.
The OBD's off when the truck's off. So
No.
you're not. It's
No,
not.
no.
I mean, mine turns off.
It does not. I connect to mine often, laying in bed in the mornings to see what the battery temperature is.
Really?
Yes.
But is the blue light still on all the time?
Yes. The
Interesting.
blue light
because
does not on my truck. I don't know about everybody's and all the models. I know on a 22 and a 23 Lariat, I can't always connect, but most of the time, and most of that's a distance
mine
thing.
will not connect. at
Isn't
all.
that also how those aftermarket cameras work? If you want, because if you put a dash cam in, it shuts off when the truck shuts off. But if people wire it to the OBD2, that's how they can keep those cameras on, is they're getting power from there. Isn't that how
See,
they're
that's a
doing
different
that?
story. Yeah, that's a totally different story though.
You're
Those
talking about
will
one
run.
wire.
Those will take battery though, and you can actually each camera is different. I've seen some that literally will have settings that you can say like low 12-volt usage, high 12-volt usage. Like, I'm not concerned. They'll literally give you kind of a rundown. But I maybe I have something wrong with my VP, because I'm telling you, Justin's works really well, but mine is not. And I couldn't connect it to ARDP either. Like it would not find it.
So this
And
is
you've got a
comment that he put up here. I appreciate the comment. It doesn't know us because you're OBD. It could have been something else, because we see those often. I see it can be because of something malfunctioning. Lots of things can cause the drain on your low voltage battery. I have never seen that when I had that in there, and I've had it in for 2 years. So yes, good point that it can create a drain, but there's not a lot of amperage running through that battery when you have that little light on.
I will be honest, I had a very scary experience with an OBD one time with my Lightning. I went to go plug it in, and for some reason, my entire Lightning threw a huge fit, and it threw up every error known to man, and it said stop safely now, service advanced. I mean, it went off, and I just unplugged the OBD, turned it off, turned it back on, and it was completely fine. But one time, something weird happened. I don't know.
Yeah,
what it
you
was,
probably
but
had a little short or a pin that jumped arced or something. I mean, like I've mentioned before, you can get that trying to reprogram TPMS sensors.
right.
If you cycle that key too fast and it closes those contactors and opens them too fast, it will freak the truck out. And the only way to fix that is a 12-volt disconnect and a clear codes with a scanner.
I think I am going to get the OBD LX though, just to have it. It's a nicer one. Then we'll be able to take it on trips, and I think it's ARBP Pro, whatever.
Yep, and I would tell you, and we talked about that a little bit. To be able to get even the V-Peak, which is the one I run, to get it connected to a better route planner the first time, it takes a little bit to get it to connect. You have to wait and let it sit there, and it'll find it. Once it connects that first time, and that was my experience with Car Scanner even, it takes a little bit. and they don't throw up. It doesn't say VPeak in Car Scanner. It gives you the MAC address, and you have to know what it is. So I have 2 of them now, and I'll try. And if my wife's car is sitting right next to my truck, and I go to connect to it, I got to make sure which one I'm connecting to, and you can't rename them. So that can get a little frustrating, but it's usually only on that first connection that you have any trouble. I get in my truck now, and it auto starts Car Scanner. It auto starts the Android Auto, and all I have to do is click Car Scanner on the Android Auto screen, and it comes up to my screen. So
Nice.
But you can't do both at the same time, right, Martin? You can't do a better route planner and Car Scanner. You've got to.
That's correct. They do make OBD dual line, but they're not common. It's not anything you're going to buy on Amazon. You have to disconnect and reconnect. So you'll have to go into your phone app and actually, when I'm running, for instance, when I've got my Benai's box and running either Car Scanner over there, or when I'm running it through Android Auto off my phone, you have to disconnect the OBD connection of the one you don't want to use.
Yeah, see, I wonder, I can't get mine to auto connect at all. Like there's just no, I have to reconnect every time. And then sometimes it will not reconnect. Like if I go into Car Scanner and try to connect it, it won't until I unplug it and plug it back in.
On Car Scanner, that connection's actually happening through your phone. Has really nothing to do with the truck. So maybe it's something with your phone and VPeak.
Yeah, and my VPeak was old. Like I bought it. It was the first one we bought. It was 2.5 years ago now. So it's possible that they have an upgraded, thing. But like I said, I think I really am going to just look into that OBD LX or whatever the
OBD. That's what I have for doing 4Scan updates. I bought the wired version because everybody said the wired is more stable. Like I mentioned on our last,
I have the wired too.
You're going to do those, just get the wired one. I have done it with Bluetooth, and you can, if you mess up in the middle of an update, be prepared to reset.
No. I'll use the wired for updates, but for our trips, I want to get one that maybe will connect to ARVP Pro. I'll mess around with the VP just to see if I could get it, working right. But I think, if you really want to see the data, it's a great way to do it. Hopefully we'll get some more, direct from Ford. But in the meantime, I think, it works for the people that want the data. They can find it. So I think that's good.
I just want there to be that future where all this stuff is integrated seamlessly, because I feel like I'm always trying to work around things. I'm trying to, there isn't a pet mode, but I can turn the timer off and set the temperature and lock everything. And
there's actually that coming. I read a post today. There's a GitHub, Google search GitHub Ford Lightning updates, and you'll see pet mode is in the works. I saw that out there. So that we'll see.
I think it's big.
But like we talked about today, when it rolls out with the 2026, I'm still not going to have it. I still won't have the 2025 stuff that's about to roll out. I still won't have the 2024 stuff that's already rolled out.
It could. So, I will say, though, that in some ways, like the 2024 Ford did sort of fix some of this where, yes, the 2024 shipped with 1.2. However, it didn't have like before when we had the 2022 and 2023, the 2023 needed like a long time to catch up to the 2022. Now we've kind of seen where at least with the 2024, they're caught up. They were caught up and they've been caught up. They're, other than 1.4, so to speak, they're pretty caught up. So they have fixed that at least as far as going forward. But at the same time, I have been pleased to see from some folk online, let me put it that way, that 1.4 has shipped to certain folks, and happy to see that for those folks. And that makes me happy, though, in a certain sense that Ford is sending two 2023s and 2022s 1.4 before it hit 2024. So,
which tells you the software, the package of the hardware and stuff is there.
It is, yeah. And I think that's important, though, that they want to make sure that they upgrade folks who may soon have to be paying for it, which again does include 2024s, unless you bought it with it. You only are in a 90-day trial. So, I do like that Ford is at least sort of trying to give the older trucks updates. I know that doesn't affect you, Chris, but I do like to see that. I think that's a move in the right direction, at least as far as where we need to be headed. Obviously, the speed needs to quadruple, quintuple, if you will. But I am glad to see older trucks get updates before a brand new 2024. I think that's the right direction.
You know, it's funny because we talked a lot about BlueCruise tonight. Chris, you don't have it. I really, it's not a game changer in my life. I live in Southeast Kansas. Unless I go to Tulsa or Wichita or Kansas City, we don't.
A lot of your roads aren't mapped.
No,
are you not?
No, they're not mapped at all. The
Yeah.
closest road for me is an hour away, and so I can't. Mine is 90% of the time is lane assist,
Co-pilot.
which is where you get the steering wheel above the speedometer. Above the power that says keep your hands on the wheel, and it's not secret that everybody knows the little trick to fake that out. It's not safe, but you can do that little trick, and I'm not going to say it live. They can go Google it if they want to know how to work that around. But that's what I do most of the time because I don't get the opportunity for that. Which going through that GMC Sierra today, Super Cruise roads are far advanced for what roads are hands-free Super Cruise roads.
Yeah.
So I would like to
GM still not allow you to
rather than push this. Honestly, BlueCruise 1.5, I don't even care. I don't want it. I just want it to work where I'm at. Give me 1.0 to work where I'm at.
Or does GM not allow you to use lane centering with anywhere though still? Because that was a thing that Kyle Connor complained about.
That. I know.
I would rather take that than the more mapped Super Cruise maps.
I gotta tell you though, do you like lane centering? Because I hate it unless I do this trick that I'm referring to. I don't want the truck to drive and me to drive at the same time.
It allows me to use it in the city, quote unquote, if that makes sense. So yes, now on the highway, no, but in the opposite of you, almost every single highway basically every single highway except for a couple state routes are BlueCruise covered. So for us, it's totally opposite just because we're right by Detroit. And I mean, we don't like our trip up north is 94% BlueCruise. So it's,
that's wonderful. But if you actually go look at the map and zoom in on Kansas, there's nothing. We spent a whole weekend in Wichita about 6 months ago, and every road in Wichita that I was on is BlueCruise. And you just pulling out of the hotel to go a mile down the road, your hands free. All of a sudden, it's very seamless.
That's us. Yeah. Matt Lynn says the same thing about Texas, that just out there in the boonies, there's no, a lot of the highways just are not mapped. So it's unfortunate because it does lead to a different ownership experience, right? Like, I mean, our feelings on BlueCruise, and I think people think I'm making this up, but I literally try to tweet almost every time I use BlueCruise, and it's every day. I mean, it's every single, we had combined between the two of us almost 9,000 miles in BlueCruise last year.
Jace, you're getting it automatic when you push the cruise on button. And for me,
exactly,
I got to be honest, it pisses me off that does that when it doesn't go. I don't want you to automatically come on lane centering. I don't like lane centering if I have to drive because it's fighting me. If I forget to turn, if I'm out on the highway, four lane highway, and there's nobody around and I just want to move over, the truck fights me. I have to. So my habit now is to push the cruise button and then go down and turn lane centering off by default. My brain is wired to do that now because we don't have that. And so I don't like that lane centering coming on. There's no way I've found in Forescan to default that to off. So for me,
I think the problem is that they did. I think they made a mistake with doing the resistive steering. That needed to have been an inductive steering like Rivian has, and that would solve it. Because I don't mind having my hand on the steering wheel. The problem is that you have to apply torque the whole time, and
it's actually more exhausting. You have to pull down a little bit. It's more exhausting to do that than it is. So that you're right.
It's as simple as changing it to induction. And I think I wonder sometimes with Ford, I wonder this, for example, with the chargers that they're giving away for free now. When they originally, if you remember, launched the Lightning, they were talking about 100,000 trucks, 3 shifts, all these things, right? And a lot of times these contracts are signed years in advance. As they're sourcing their products. They've already talked about how they've sourced almost all of the suppliers for the 2027 next gen. Like this stuff is already kind of baked in already 2 years away. And so I wonder sometimes like
we have to be. Because by the time you go through engineering and then all the product validation, the stuff that we're doing at Deere, you're going to see in 2027, 2028. I mean, the tech is 2 years old when it comes out, when the public sees it.
So I think to that point that you like they can't just change the steering wheel that easily because they've already spec'd it and supplied it and all the modules to control it and the things like I think with those chargers they're giving away, I bet those are the same chargers that were made in 2022. And they're like, I
And
got it.
remember, you're not just talking about Lightning. You're talking about F150 too at this point,
Yeah,
right?
same
They
steering
share
wheel.
so many parts, and
Yeah.
so you're talking about literally the best-selling vehicle in the United States, as far
You-
So
And it's hard to argue
they've
with that.
sourced a lot of those.
We're
Yeah,
sitting
so it's
here
the
saying
same-
how bad the torque steering is versus the capacitive steering wheel, but it's the number one selling truck in the world. So how bad is that really?
You could scale. It seems like at scale, you'd be able
We
to.
used to use it on the Power Boost, and I'm telling you, we thought it was amazing. We were like,
Yeah.
we thought this was amazing, you know? I mean,
It's
seriously. And
funny
then,
the user experience difference because I hate having to pull down on that steering wheel all the time. I just I don't want to do
I
it.
think for us it was before it was my Bronco didn't have anything, so
What's funny about it?
worse than
What's funny about it though is they're a victim of their own great design because the Lightning is so dialed in. It is so like steady down the road that the big street that's near me is Mission Boulevard. It's a big, huge, huge, long, straight kind of backbone that goes north to south in the Bay Area. And when I'm driving on it, the truck is so straight that and so solid and locked in that it will tell me to keep my hands on the wheel. And I'm not in any of the BlueCruise settings. It just thinks my hands aren't on the wheel because the truck is so locked in and so planted that it's like it needs me to wiggle the wheel even when I'm not in adaptive cruise control because it's so locked in that it doesn't move. And so it's almost like it's such a stable vehicle that your hands don't even move enough naturally driving, on straight roads.
the steering's very tight in the Lightning compared to an ICE.
It feels totally different. And it's funny because that steering rack is the same.
I know.
But
It's
is it the weight?
electronic something.
It has to do.
Yeah.
It
Gotta
has
be the
to
weight,
do with
right?
the
Low center of
alignment
gravity.
specs. Those trucks stay in plan and has a lot to do with the camber, and that's how far back your axles are tilted off of zero. So it's usually -3 to -5 degrees, and that camber with the weight that we have makes them just track perfectly true. That's really
They really do.
very well thought out.
Like they've designed it so well that it thinks that your hands aren't on the wheel because you're not
Well,
moving
the
the wheel.
F150 is a it's become in a certain sense a perfect product. Not quite, obviously, but it's been iterized, so to speak. The iterations have been over the years for so many years, and they've got it down to a perfect science almost. I mean, there's obviously improvements that can be made,
But I'm still excited to hear what's coming, though. We talked about this a little bit at the beginning, and I know that Ford. I heard some rumors that they're working on. Obviously, EREVs is going to be the future for some of this. That is where we should have started to gain the feeling of electric power. But we all were used to gas not 5 years ago. Everyone else was driving a gas car probably 5 years ago. Tesla was out, and there's a few other ones, the Leaf and the Prius, and we had some stuff. But in pickup trucks, it was gas, F-150, either 5-liter Power Boost, Hemi, or Chevy's 5.3. But you didn't get that electric power. And I think if we had started with the EREV, electric, I'm talking about the engine's sole purpose is to run a generator, which is then running as charging batteries or providing power to the wheels, which is the same thing Edison's doing up in Canada with his big trucks and all the semis, and they're bringing those to a smaller level. I think that's where we should have started. And Ford's starting to recognize that Lightnings aren't selling because of, number one, cost, number two, charge time. And that will take that out of it, which is why I have still been preaching the range extender for the Lightning, because it's not going to fix my charge time, but it's going to cut my amount of charging down in half. And that's,
I just want to I want to share with you some of the, I think, really powerful quotes from this earnings call that we just had with Ford. I thought it is a transformational shift in strategy. It is,
yes.
I think it's been hinted at and it's been, guessed at, but it couldn't have been more clear on this call. And these are the kind of the notes that I made, is that large retail vehicles, the economics are unresolvable. Like that was the exact sentence he used. The economics are unresolvable. Customers will not pay a premium for them. Plug-in hybrid, and EREV will be the focus and will be designed for multi-platform use. Commercial customers are more willing to pay premiums, because they can measure TCO, total cost of ownership, better and have depot charging. And they talked about that they had a lot of pricing pressure, so they've hit record sales by cutting pricing, and they've done a really good job. You've seen them every year kind of trim back little things here and there, whether it's, and I think the 22s and 23s were the most complete truck that you'll ever get. And then each year since, it's like
2022 specifically.
Yeah, I mean, if you were lucky enough to get one of those fully loaded, I'm not talking on platinum, but even just, the bed scales and all the little cameras, every little thing
Why
that was
we
kind of in
haven't
there.
traded in our trucks, I mean, one of the
It's-
reasons at least.
Yeah, I think they've slowly started paring those things down, like removing the extra, the 80 amp charger, the door code, the spare tire, all
And
of
a
these
lot
little.
of them, except for the first one you mentioned, but a lot of them you can add them as options, so that's good at least. But
Yeah, they're just not standard.
you're gonna have to spare
That's
tire
good,
now,
and
which it's actually they're showing that across Ford Blue. I think it was
the 80 amp
new
charger deal. That's a stop for me,
Oh,
a hard stop. I won't buy a
Yeah.
24 Lightning because I pull in here all the time empty and need to go at 7 a.m.
But the result of that is, when they reported that revenue was down 35%, and even with that, they cut losses because and they really had to do this. And Gen 1, they said Gen 1 is still not profitable, and beyond just the not. I'm just talking about like the big. They always throw the big numbers out, like they lose. And it's down because originally it used to be they lose 100,000 on every vehicle. Now I think it's down to 35,000 every vehicle. But they literally said $1 billion of that is half engineering, half manufacturing. So like $1 billion of it right there is of a year is that stuff. But even that aside, Gen 1 is still losing money. They know that that's the case. They're going to really focus. They couldn't have been more clear. They're going to focus on smaller, affordable, commuter and around town EVs. And when it comes to the bigger stuff, it's going to be gas and it's going to be EREV. That is where it's going to be.
That's why they said the Lightning name might not even continue in 27.
Yeah, so it's
I never
hard.
thought it would, to be honest. I never saw it. Like Ford put out a YouTube video, and it was quite clear from the very beginning that this was a successor to F150 Lightning. I could see maybe
That's why I bought
F150
it.
Lightning, sticking around as like a pro trim or something. But I never really saw Lightning name sticking because I don't see. Lightning is a transformational product in a certain sense. It really was never supposed to be the next gen ultimate, truck.
Well, back in the
was
day,
more of a let's get us towards electrification.
Yeah, back in the day, it was special vehicle team. It was the performance side of Ford, the Cobras, the Lightnings, the little Focus. That was even in the 80s, the SVO side for the Mustang. It was when this Lightning was announced back in, what was it, 20 or 21, I was pissed that they called this electric pickup truck a Lightning because I'd had 5 of the earlier versions. I fully expected the Lightning.
It was the Mustang thing.
Yeah, as a 2-door short bed, maybe a 4-wheel drive, maybe not, in a 5-liter with a big supercharger. That's what it needed to be. In fact, before I bought my Lightning, about 6 months before, I had spec'd out an XL wreck truck because I do wreck trucks, and I already had the supercharger picked out, an all-wheel drive. I was going to lower it. That's where I was headed until I drove one, and then I realized it's actually fitting to call it Lightning because it's electric. It really does nothing to carry on the legacy that we had going from the earlier trucks. But you're right, Jason. It's a transformation or a specialty vehicle.
Well, I think one of the big takeaways when we got to visit Detroit and got to speak to a lot of the people behind the scenes that I really took away from our trip was it had to be Lightning and it had to be Mustang, because to take a legacy company like that with the old school thinking, they had to break the team off into a smaller, more agile team. That and the brand, it had to be Mustang and it had to be F-150 Lightning, because it meant so much. The same reason that people sometimes recoil and say, that's not, you can't have a 4-door Mustang, you can't have a 4-door, Lightning. Those people that care Charger, right? Yes. Those people that care so much about those brand names are like, if you're going to stick me with this, it can't embarrass the name. So they had to name it that. They had to keep with that in order to
Oh, and
get
we saw the prototype of what
yeah,
Ford wanted before, right? I mean, you're talking to basically a fusion-esque,
right.
Focus sort of esque, thing that Taurus maybe that just it was a bland, commuter car. Not that I don't think Ford should not get back into sedans because I
I
do,
was
but
I was just gonna say though. So
I really do. But just maybe,
this is
not for the first one.
this is the thing though, is that it's gone full circle. This is what's so crazy about
Yes, it's so weird though. Yeah.
2025 is really in the heart. It's this transitional year that's going to be really boring because 2 years previous and 2 years forward are radically different. Because
Yep.
2 years previous, we were talking about exactly what you just said, Jace. Look at this boring car, this commuter car. Nope, this isn't exciting. And Jim would say, we're not going to make boring cars. We're going to make exciting cars. And
We're
that's the
keeping
thing
the
is that,
V8 and the Mustang.
yeah, that the Mustang, Dark Horse, and the GT. What was that one that just came out?
GTD.
Sorry, the GTD. Right.
GTD.
We want exciting cars. I think the Bronco Sport, all the different variations of that. I think the Mustang Mach E, for all its criticism, is a pretty creative car. It's a cool looking car. Like, it's so less
It
boring.
should have been called the Comet, not a Mustang, but they did it on purpose to appeal to that Mustang buyer that's not.
People are still talking about it.
70-year-old that has a 69 Shelby GT500 in their garage or a 67 Shelby. You want the guys that I'm driving a Mustang and it's cool and it's, but
and again, you had to internally. It was
a
as
regular
much,
Mustang last quarter.
It was as much for internal as it was for external, though. Those internal people that were going to build this thing, it had to be branded that way to get their full attention and seriousness. But here we are now, where I was expecting, and I think you're still going to get like some type of Maverick or Ranger EV because that is smaller. You are going to get some of these other, but they're gonna be, maybe they're not.
EREV.
Hopefully, they're not going to be boring. But they are going to be these commuter vehicles that 2 years ago were the antithesis of what they were doing. They were not going to build those. And now we've come full circle to, in 2027, the BEV team is going to be maybe the Focus or the Escort, or who knows what brands are going to come back because they need to be affordable.
I do think they'll try to make him not boring, like you said. But I think there is a line there, right? Like, you can't make it the most amazing vehicle and charge $25,000. It's just it's not going to happen. But
that's the bolt.
But I do think that Ford has in their favor very prominent nameplates and legacy to go with those nameplates. So I think that luckily, and I think Ford's in this, and I think they were there before, but they're almost more now in it. They have so many levers to pull. It's just like, what lever do we pull and when? And what does the market want? Because we've seen the market go from, like you just said, Chris, where we're like, screw commuter cars, we don't want that, and then now we're like, we need $25,000, dollar commuter cars so that, instead of buying a Bronco Sport, somebody's buying the new BEV Bronco Sport, and it's just we've transitioned to
$12 a dozen.
Well, I think the Maverick, though, the Maverick would make a great BEV, right? The Bronco Sport would make a great BEV. It won't be the exact body like that it is now. They'll get creative with it.
We're going to be able to sell those mass as a strictly battery electric vehicle in a mass. I mean, if we're really getting down to brass tacks on what's going to sell, what's going to get my parents to buy, it would be battery powered, but there better be a gas engine where I don't have to stop. And I think that's a good transition over the next 5 to 10 years to get people to move.
I think that changes a bit once I'm not going infrastructure back. Though gets a little better. I do think eventually that will change, but I don't think we're as close as what we thought we were, right? I think in 2021 we were like, we thought we were here. Like, and it could change. Again, I think, Ford said that yesterday too. I think that was a really important part of the call was Jim said, we will adjust, we have adjusted, and we will continue to adjust if we need to, so the market has changed. I never thought 2 years ago, even a year ago, that EREV would be a thing. I thought we would transition direct to like I thought Dodge and, whoever would, go with it for a couple years, but it would be wasted money. And my mind has changed on it. It really has. I've opened my eyes to it because, and maybe it's because nobody foresees a big battery, breakthrough. Maybe it's because the economy has changed. Maybe it's because Trump just tried to cancel NEVI today. I mean, who knows what it could be, right? We're changing left and right. So I think Ford just has to literally keep up with that and respond accordingly. And
I
that
mean,
the market has changed.
they are a publicly traded company, have to answer to stockholders, and they have to be profitable at some level. And in order to do that, you have to build a product that people actually want to buy. And I think that the EREV, battery powered with a gasoline, is where we need to transition for a while. And I agree with Ford's going business decision on that. However, I don't think that that's the end all be all. I think I don't know if you guys have watched that show Landman, but that's a good example of, we are a very oil dependent country on everything we're doing, what we're wearing, all this plastic, everything around us. It's going to depend on oil. So transitioning from gasoline in our cars to electric power is not going to fix it overnight. But I think long term, we're going to have to come to an alternative fuel, whether, like Jesse always says, it's hydrogen or something else. But
shout out real quick though.
Move,
shout out real quick, Billy Bob Thornton. So that's an awesome show.
It's a great show. I mean, I didn't agree with him because I love my Lightning, but he's got
awesome character though.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a movie, but on the other hand, there's a lot of truth to that, So I think moving forward, I think the EREV is a good place to go. Now, I will say that Jcraft that just came out in China, that was like a 9-minute charge from 0 to 80%. If that happens in T3 or the next gen Mach E or anything related, that'll change. The next thing will be like Jace, like you just said, even if your truck would have charged in 10 minutes, you're struggling with infrastructure on that trip you took. So infrastructure is next. And if we don't continue to support that, it will slow down. Like if he cancels NEVI and it's just about private entrepreneurs building that out, it's going to slow down.
I
understand what happens there, because it sounds like the courts are. I mean, it was through Congress, so I'm not sure he can necessarily get rid of and stop it. But I will be very curious, because I think there's going to be a big battle when it comes to that.
I look at it as,
I hate to say it. Does most folks, not us three, but does most folks want to pay for this? Because it's coming out of tax dollars. They have to cut. We are so far in debt in this country. We had to cut somewhere, and that could be a place. I'm not saying it. It's hard to sit here and say it's going to cut our future, because we don't know.
Yeah, I just think you look at China and it's like, we got to catch up. But I agree. I mean, I think no matter what we do with NEVI, private companies are investing million. I mean, you see Pilot Flying J, you see Loves, you see Travel Center of America, now BP. You see it's going to happen. Walmart's putting in charge of Costco. It's going to happen. But I would like to see the NEVI, funds stick around. Obviously, I'm fine with paying for it. But probably the vast majority of America is absolutely not paying for it or fine with paying for it. And I certainly can't blame them. They don't understand EVs, period. They don't own one. So, I could understand as an owner or a non-owner why, it would not appeal to me.
My hope with this stuff is that we've got these companies like Alpatronic and Chempower that have built factories in the US and they've invested, and we've got people like LG coming in and building battery factories, and we've got these companies like Hyundai Kia and all these folks that are building factories, and they're building them in Georgia and Kentucky and the Carolinas, and these are American jobs, and this is the American future. And I think that's where I just look at I look at these things as inferior technologies. And so I'm just such a fan of battery electric, and I see what's coming out of China and I see what's possible. And it just seems like sooner or later, these Chinese companies are going to come in and they're going to eat our lunch. And while we're screwing around with the rotary phones, they're going to show up with an iPhone, and we're going to be too slow and too late. And, credit.
Well, we'd have to legislate our way out of it. That's the only way to.
But these are
happening already.
Out of it.
The last
companies like
years,
Ford,
the things that we buy that are made in China, that are just daily, the mics that we're talking on and the phones that we carry, they're not made here. So
once you lose it,
right?
Once you lose it, it's gone. It's never coming back. Like, we are not going to manufacture ovens and stoves and TVs and refrigerators in America again. We're not going to manufacture tennis shoes in America again. We're not going to manufacture phones in America again.
I mean, there'll
So you're
always
going to
be
see
a niche. You'll have your
really
people, but at
expensive
mainstream bulk, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, we have a company out here in the Bay Area called Kindred Automotive, which is a remarkable company, and they do battery electric Broncos and old school VW buses.
$250,000.
Expensive, right? And so yeah,
and there'll be a niche for that, but in the
there's
in
a
the
niche
bulk
for
of
it.
you're
Yeah,
right.
But I look at it and I'm like, I want these to be American energy and American cars, and that's where no matter what people will ever say about Tesla, I look at things like and Elon. I look at things like SpaceX rockets. We are making our rockets in America with American engineering and American parts. And Boeing was getting their rocket technology from Russia. And if we were still stuck on Russia, and I feel the same way about EVs.
You don't have to agree with Elon's political stance or what he does to know that they are doing things here, and it's trying to support what we're doing here.
That's my thing, man. I want my friends that come from Europe, like Kempower and Alpatronic, to be successful. I want, Tesla is the most American car made. I want that for Ford. And I'll take the Americas, right? I don't have a problem with these things coming out of Canada and Mexico. I don't want them dependent on China. And if we lose that race, then it will be, again, these things where it says designed in America, made in China, and we're going to lose another piece of manufacturing base. And that's where I get worried about this stuff. And that's where I'm a fan of it. And I don't want.
What's funny, Chris? We brag about Tesla being made here and Ford and all that, but most of the components are already made overseas. We
Not
can't
Tesla, though.
otherwise.
The vast majority of Tesla is made and sourced in the U.S. They are in the 90 percentile of manufacturing.
Not all.
Because they're vertically integrated. And
I think it was Model 3 technically and Model Y are the most, right? Or is it the opposite of X and X? But I it depends on how you look at it too, because Ford has thousands and thousands of more employees that they support, here in the United States too. So you could make a claim that Ford is also the most American made, wink wink made, car as well, not with parts, but with people,
manufactured. So they're assembled. They're assembled in America. Or
it's all about jobs. And I think there's a place for, I think Elon said in one of the Joe Rogan podcasts, and he made a hell of a point. There's a place for specialties. If you want to have the best watchmaker in the world, let's let Sweden or whoever focus on that and let them build watches. We can't do everything, but we can do some things very well. And trying to do it all is going to cost us because you're not good at anything in particular. But if Japan is best at electronics and we are best at name it, I think that is a good point. So I think there's going to be a need to trying to focus on that and do what we do.
Yeah, I think the fun thing is going to be to see where this all shakes out in these next couple of years. And I do think Ford made a smart pivot with the idea of saying it's really contrarian to what has been thought, which is, hey, you should have a purpose. In fact, Ford gets criticized for the F-150 being a converted platform from gas, but that's honestly the future of this is I'm going to have a plug-in, I'm going to have an EREV, I'm going to have a battery all on the same platform. And what's genius about that is you preserve the choice of what your use case is. And if they are EREV, at least you're still looking at the same shared components when you're talking about drivetrain. It's just a matter of you've got that extra piece in there that I'm not a fan of personally, but I'm not like you, Martin, and I'm not towing a truck or trailer anywhere, right? So that's not my use case. So I'm going to be okay with battery electric, but there's going to be a ton of people that come in from the Central Valley here in California and drive an hour and a half every day to get to work. And then they're in the trade. So then they're driving Monterey to the Napa Valley doing their trade work and then all the way back to the Central Valley again.
That mantra, the right tool for the right job. I've said it, and I'm going to continue to say it. Don't pick up a hammer if what you need is a screwdriver. And there's so many people knock the Lightning because it can't go 500 miles like the GMC, but you wouldn't expect your screwdriver to hammer a nail. I mean, it's just not. You have to keep some grounded mindsets here when we're talking about what the use case is for these vehicles.
Yeah, this is the comment 222 ain't. Right. How many things we're waiting on chips and that's the scary part about. Yeah, you can't do anything without those chips, or some of those things in those 22s were cut out because heated steering wheels and bed scales and some things were waiting on modules and chips they couldn't get. And they were just all right, depending on what group of manufacturing you got, you're right. Those chips weren't available and those features were taken out. So yeah, I think, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, well, that's us in a nutshell right now. We are trying to find ourselves as a country. We've got all this debt. We've got all this American made that we want to be. People are tired of overpaying for things. Whereas you can go buy it in China and Temu and Amazon, which is a lot of Chinese stuff now, way cheaper. And we've got some righting of the ship to do. And whether you agree with Trump's, and I'm not trying to get political here, I think that's the intent behind it, but we'll see. We'll see. I don't trust it yet. So, especially when we start talking about all this renaming Gulfs and worrying about pronouns, and let people alone.
Yeah, and no matter who it is, I think we got to see what happens, and I think that kind of is what this whole conversation is tonight. Like it's what is going to happen. There's a lot to be seen. I think maybe next week we should maybe like think about talking about like maybe looking at Dodge's EREV concept or something, maybe some EREV stuff eventually at least, because I think I even would love just kind of update myself on it more so that I know more about it. I mean, I think it's the future of Ford, so, or at least part of it. So I think
maybe that's a tidbit of next week's topic.
I like
talk about EREVs. Yeah.
It's
I think it's crazy because if you'd have asked me 6 months ago, I would have been like, no, that's not even on the radar. That's not. I know it's not happening. And now it's
maybe for Super Duty, Duty. I definitely, that was the first one where I thought, okay, like I could see this. And
you put a 5-liter pushing a big generator. Yeah.
And they've got plenty of room. I mean, not that Lightning doesn't, because it's got room.
I'll be honest, Deere's pushing a lot of that too, and I can't speak too much about it, but the bottom line, for most of the people who run this construction and they want less downtime. So when you have a more simple process, and they don't care about fuel economy. I hate to say that. Most of these big contractors don't care about fuel economy. You do gain about a 20% fuel economy in some of our hybrid stuff from Deere. But in Ford, if you can get a Super Duty that'll run 20 miles a gallon, most of those, that's a game changer, but not as much as I don't want it to break down because I got to be on the road.
It's kind of like the idea of the rich people that fly the rich people that fly a private jet. It's not a cheaper way to travel, but time is money, and so they're using those private jets not because they're more efficient. It's convenience. And that's how you get the job done.
I think that's exactly why the Lightning has sold 30,000 and they sold 300,000 F-150s. Time is money. And it's not the right tool for every job, and we got to find a tool that is. So, well, this has been a good discussion tonight, guys. I think we segued into next week. Tune in next week if you want to hear more about sounds like some EREVs, some gasoline or diesel powered, maybe hydrogen powered stuff.
I got a little road trip too in the morning. So
where are you going? Where are you going?
Just south of Detroit. Nothing Ford related, unfortunately. I think I'll have one or two little charging stops. So we'll see how they go. Awesome. It'll be interesting to see, because last time this was a stop where actually the EA was derated of the one day, and then I came back, and the next day it was the exact opposite. Tesla was derated. So we'll see.
I'll be anxious to hear about that.
Yeah, it's always fun too, because it's one of the weird stops where at a rest area we have 4 EA chargers and like 8 to 12-ish, 10-ish Tesla Superchargers, and so you can kind of like take your pick. It's fun to be able to, I mean, how often in the US in the same parking lot? When we went to Norway, I saw, I don't know, 6 parking lots that had, tube networks in it. But here in the US, I mean, it doesn't happen. So it's kind of fun to be able to choose. So I'll let you know how it goes.
Sounds great. Guys, thanks for the discussion. Thanks everybody who joined in, and we will see you guys next week on Tech Charge.